Good evening. I'm Matt Griggs. I'm one of the Raising Standards leaders, and part and parcel of our roles is to oversee attainment and progress for every single one of our Year 10s going into Year 11s. And we've got lots and lots of different roles which we take on, and one of those is very much about monitoring our students' progress and their attainment, and we'll look at a whole host of different bits of data and information that we get from their teachers. So we'll look at things like their 3Rs to look at how they are doing in classes. We'll look at their targets which have been set. We'll look at their attainment which they've got from, for example, from their trial exams. We'll look at how well they're doing, and then whether or not there are any bits and pieces that we can start to put into place and then start to help them achieve. And that is fundamentally what we want. We want every single one of our students to achieve their all of their potential. And we want them to do that in every single subject. So we will work with their teachers, we'll work with their heads of faculty, we'll work with the excellent pastoral team that's in place as well, to support them in every way that we can to do that. Part and parcel of that as well in terms of supporting them is that we are currently having our tutoring, which we're currently having for English and Maths, which is quite intensive at the moment, and that will then continue to target students who need that little bit of extra support during Year 11 and then running up to their exams as well. Following that, we'll also support things like their applications for post-16. So regardless if they're staying with us here or if they're going on to college, we will support them in any way that we can do that. The fundamentals of our role is basically that we have the students' interests at heart and we want them to be as successful as possible. And I think part and parcel of that as well is that we have a really, really positive relationship with you as well. So we run a policy whereby our door is always open, so that students can come see us about anything and everything they need, especially when it comes to sort of resources and revision and those different bits and pieces. But also we're at the end of an email, so if there are bits and pieces that you want from us, then always feel free to just drop us a line and we can come back to you and then try and support you with that, with anything that you need.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Taylor, I'm one of the other RSLs. So in Year 10 and 11 we run a programme called the Empowered to Succeed programme. And it brings together lots and lots and lots of little things that we do, working with the students within crew times, within lesson times, with reflections. We look at the subject tutoring, we do mentoring, we look at a lot of target setting, we look at revision a lot, revision strategies and revision programmes, and we will provide assemblies that will help and support the students. It all comes together throughout the school. So it's not just about one particular element of it. It happens through the crew programme, it happens through E2L activities, it happens in the personal development lessons, and it happens through our career programme as well. It brings everything together there. As part of this, we have what we call the Ashby Core 4, and that is 4 revision strategies that we focus on throughout the school. So within all of our subjects, when we're revising in class, we focus on these 4 strategies. And they are flashcards, mind maps, brain dumps, and self-quizzing. And the reason we focus just on those 4 is that it just gives students a lot more confidence to help get started with their revision. There's loads and loads of different ways you can revise out there. But if you don't really know what you're doing and you don't know where to start, it can be quite challenging. And that's sort of a wall that a lot of students find, is I just don't know where to start. By equipping them with these 4 strategies and teaching them these strategies within our lessons, it means that when they go home, they can go, right, well, I need to revise some English. Okay, I can make some flashcards on that because I've learnt how to make flashcards for my English quotes in my lesson. I need to revise some of my biology. Well, let me see what I can remember and I'll do a brain dump on that and get everything down and then work on what I need to revise. We have got some detailed information about how to do this in your booklet so that parents, you can support your students, your children with this, and it walks you through how to do that. And we also have some videos on the website that are really informative. They're quite long, they've got examples on them, each video is about 20 minutes long, but if you want to help support your child with that and you want to get to grips with how to do those revision techniques, they are really, really useful to do.
So one of the things that supports this is the Hermann Ebbinghaus research. It's like a psychology concept whereby it's the idea of that it's based around the forgetting curve. And it's the idea that we're not necessarily bad at remembering things. It's just that because we have so much information going on, and that's especially true for students who have 5 lessons a day and have to take in so much information, is that if we don't use the information, we sort of discard it. So the idea being is that through repetition and through continuing to learn and do things often, we're then able to then try and move that from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. So the idea being, based around the core 4, is that if we're able to use effective strategies like engaging with it, if we're able to do it over a spatial repetition often, and if we're able to then do active recalls, but then also being able to connect ideas to it, we're then able to then use information they pick up during their lessons, and through that regular revisiting, are able to then use that when it comes to then applying it in their exams, for example. So, how and where could we do this? So one of the first things that we suggest, and we go through the students, is trying to be organised and have an idea of how they can set their times and use that really, really usefully. So one of those things is having a really good revision timetable. And it's based around what works for them. And I think one of the first things that there needs to be is an absolute balance in terms of making sure that they continue to have that commitment to the things that they enjoy. So for example, the sports that they might play, or the musical instruments that they practice, or seeing their friends, or part-time jobs potentially. It's about having that balance. School is really, really important, but it's also about them looking after themselves as well. Then look at then what is offered at school. So from September for Year 11s, when the Year 10s go into Year 11s, we will then begin to start doing after-school revision sessions, which extra information will go out to you after the summer. And it's about them being able to put them and slot them into their timetable so that they can have that expertise and support from us at school. Then obviously put some time in for themselves. Eating is important, so sleeping, relaxing, but then also putting things in to reward themselves as well. If they're going to work hard, it's really important that they have something at the end of that. I've worked really, really hard for an hour. I'm going to now reward myself for 10 minutes, and I'm going to have a chat with my mates. I'm going to watch my television programme, whatever it is. Then thinking about then finding the subjects which they study and the ones which they need to do, but then basing it on a regular sort of spat over time. So not doing just science just one day and that's it, not going to do it for a week. It's about that idea, linking back to the forgetting curve, of doing it often and regularly so that it then goes in. One of the things that we've also then brought about, this is about the 4th year that we've done this, is after-school revision. So that will be supported and you'll get information regarding that from the Empowered for Learning. And then something else which we run is during our half-term breaks, during February and Easter, we do revision weeks whereby staff come in their free time, and they come in and they support our students, and we will run 4 days whereby students have the opportunity to sign in and then have those expertise revisions as well. I'll pass you over to Brooke, who's Head of English.
Evening. So then in terms really of supporting your children through their GCSEs and through their revision, particularly in regards to English, I'm just going to outline first and foremost what their GCSEs look like. So for English, students will get 2 qualifications. They get one for English language and they get one for English literature. And essentially, this is the main content of what students will complete in relation to their language GCSE. There are 2 papers and they're both weighted 50% each. There are 2 parts to each of the papers. They do 50% of the marks are awarded for writing skills, 50% are awarded for reading skills. Paper 1 for language essentially centres around one piece of fiction. And there are 4 questions, each assessing slightly different skills, increases in marks, increases in difficulty as you move through those 4 questions for the reading paper. So might start with like comprehension, basic inference, ability to find and locate data from the source that you won't have seen before that's a fiction-based source. Then you move on to analysing language and structure, and then more of an evaluative question, which holds 20% of the marks for the final reading question. The question 5 for paper 1 centres around having a picture and students being able to write descriptively based on that picture. And these are skills that students have been already embedding through Key Stage 3 while they've been with us. Paper 2 then is the non-fiction component. It's awarded exactly the same amount of marks and you get exactly the same amount of time, but arguably it's slightly harder because you now have 2 sources and both of those sources are non-fiction. There is also therefore a comparative element that again is a little bit more of a difficult skill. 4 questions, as per the previous one, increases in challenge, slightly different skill base because it's now non-fiction, but with some overlaps of inference and comprehension, now the addition of summary and comparison. Unlike the descriptive, creative task of paper 1, where they use an image as stimuli and then they write creatively, for this one it is a persuasive argument. Typically an article or a letter. So again, students having access to those, reading newspapers, which I think is a little bit alien in some regards now to some of our teenagers, letters, etc. So that they're familiar with that format is really quite helpful because ultimately they might be asked to produce that in the exam for 45 minutes. With language and this upcoming exam for next year, ultimately it's knowing what you need to do for each question. There is no content to revise because each of the sources are unseen. So it's very much centred around the approach and the process for each question. Practice papers is the best thing. And in this kind of sense at the moment, it's what we're doing in class. If I've not managed to finish something, I can take that home and do an extra response to it. If I've got part of a question or a paper that we've not completed, going through that. Timings, approach and process are absolutely essential. And part and parcel of that, which I'll show you in a moment, is what we call placemats. And on these placemats, which is for paper 1 and paper 2, it essentially outlines what students do for each question. They have writing frameworks and sentence stems, reminders of key approaches, and students get given these, they have access to these, they're aware of these. And this is what we aim to embed so that when they come to each question, this is an embedded part of their practice of how to approach each question, rather than, like I said, relying on the content, because there's no content to revise, it's the approach and skills-based. 2 exams, 50% each, 1 fiction, 1 non-fiction. Students also, which is what they're doing at the moment in year 10, will come away with a qualification for spoken endorsement, which is speaking and listening. It's a second, or rather a separate qualification. It is a second qualification for English language, but separate. And they'll get a pass, a merit, or a distinction. And currently, all year 10s are working towards that at the moment, where they are currently drafting their speech to be delivered and to be assessed. You probably are aware of that. That will be completed before we break up at the end of year 10, and some students will be recorded to be sent off to be moderated. That is a separate qualification, pass, merit, or distinction. In regards to literature then, separate qualification, and again, 2 papers like there was for language. However, this is divided slightly differently with a 60% and a 40%. Over the course of the 2 years, students study 4 literature texts. So in this regard, it's very content heavy. It's not necessarily about the approach or the skills, it's much more about do you know the plot, the themes, the characters, quotations, as well as then how to write an essay. Very different style writing to what they'd have done in language. Paper 1 then centres around the 2 texts, A Christmas Carol and Macbeth. Both of those texts have already been studied by students in year 10. That makes up 40%, and there are 20% overall of their qualification that is comprised of spelling, punctuation and grammar. And as you can see, for the Macbeth question, you get 4 marks included in that for spelling, punctuation and grammar. For the second paper, which is a longer paper, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it has more components in it and is worth 60%, this is our modern text paper. So that includes texts like Inspector Calls, which students will study at the start of year 11. Some may have done it at a previous school if they join us, but we teach it in year 11. And then it has our Power and Conflict cluster of 15 poems, which again, all students have already covered. Unseen Poetry and the Unseen Poetry Comparison, which again, students have already covered. With regards to literature then, as I've said, different. It's not as much about the skills, the process and the approach. It's more about students knowing those texts inside out. In Year 11, we will go back over Macbeth. We go back over A Christmas Carol with an approach to refine our exam technique. We don't go back over content. We don't go back over making sure students know plot, themes and characters. So it really is making sure that students and your children are absolutely confident with those core foundations of those texts. The more they know the text, the more confident they're going to be in the exam, depending on what theme or character appears. The best thing as well is making sure that you can support your children with regards to completing their Seneca assignments. At the moment, we've got quite a bit of mixed and inconsistent and uptake. Students that are really performing well on that and making sure they're consistently completing those, and students that aren't. And that is an online resource, which I'll just quickly show you in a moment, but essentially that recaps the content. It goes through multiple choice questions. It has various different fill in the blanks, which true or false. It goes through a range of different activities that really consolidates their understanding of the content of those 4 literature texts. A brilliant resource and ultimately something we subscribe to as a school. Otherwise, essay questions, paragraphs, giving those to teachers, okay, so that we can provide you with feedback to support you in that process. Essentially then, Seneca, this is what Seneca looks like, and students will read, students will complete activities, and it's a really accessible resource that is, like I said, an online resource. Students should already be relatively familiar with this, but again, your support would be ideal to make sure that all our students are benefiting from it and utilising it. If anyone obviously has any issues, then obviously speak to your English teacher, but essentially it's connected to our internal kind of portal system, which means it should be relatively straightforward to access. Other things are knowledge organisers that students also have access to. This is where for literature text they will have key quotations, they have key summaries of each stave, key terminology to do with context, and they not only have access to them in Year 10, but we reprint them and we put them in a bespoke revision booklet for students. Alongside that is we have a departmental list, which students would already be familiar with, of key quotations, and they are always on coloured pieces of paper. We normally re-administer these. And again, you can be using flashcards as part of your core 4 to ensure that you know the when, the what, the how, and the why in relation to these key quotations that can be used for multiple questions. So they're my 3 main kind of bits of advice in terms of literature, key quotations, knowledge organisers, Seneca. That's me done. I will pass over to Sam Blatherwick, Head of Maths.
Hi, I'm Sam Blatherwick. I'm faculty team leader for maths. Unlike what I've just seen English go through, we have a very, very basic structure, which is that we have 3 exams. They're 90 minutes long, and literally they can ask you anything about maths on anything. There is no definition between them, apart from the first paper is the non-calculator paper. Because the first paper is the non-calculator paper, there are certain topics which we would expect to be more likely to come up on the non-calculator paper because they're much easier with the calculator. And so therefore, questions such as, I don't know, dividing, multiplying decimals, surds at higher tier would be far more likely to come up on the non-calculator paper than the calculator paper because they are patently much easier with a calculator. However, once we've been through one of the papers, we turn into a much more responsive faculty based upon what we'll do. So tomorrow is our second GCSE exam, and once I am able to get my hands on that paper, I'll be going through that paper and crossing anything off our spec that's already come up. And for our Year 11s, I then go and say, right, these are the topics that haven't come up yet. Quick, swap these ones so that we can get onto that. And in terms of that, like we had paper 1 3 weeks ago. Since that paper, we've been going through that list of topics in class and going through that. We've got a breakfast revision session tomorrow morning with our Year 11s where we've got lots of things on those topics. So we're very much responsive to that. But before that, essentially anything could come up, and so we can revise anything on that. So we are able to make best guesses later. Still, anything could come up, but that's what we work on. So maths is very simple. In terms of preparing for exams, the big difference between the last 4 years of maths and next year in maths is that you'll see exam practice and exam technique come up way more in your lessons. So we've already got trial exams, At the end of the trial exams, and coming to you soon, is we give feedback sheets on our exams. So what you'll get is a feedback sheet on those exams which tell you how you did compared to where the school average is. Sometimes this looks very negative because what you do is you go through it, like we encourage our students to go through it and pick out all of the things where they've done really badly compared to everyone else. But the reason for that is that if you've done badly compared to everyone else, those should be the places where you can make the biggest gains, okay? And we're very much like, where maths revision's bad, what people do is they just go away and practice the stuff that they're already good at. Actually, what we want our students to do is to go away and practice the stuff they're not very good at to make themselves even better at it. And this individualised feedback is really, really crucial to that. We know that our students are not like a homogenous group that like don't understand one thing and do understand another thing. It's really, really messy. And there's some things which certain students just don't get, and so the students really, really do get. And so therefore we need to be more really responsive to that. And that really guides the way that we deal with maths in year 11 and the way that we work on things. So from the autumn term, what we do is we do a fortnightly sequence of past papers. So in one lesson a fortnight, we do an exam paper as part of that lessons, not as a test, and different teachers will deal with it in different ways depending on the nature of their group, but we will have a dedicated lesson where we work through exam questions. Now, if those exams are 90 minutes long and we have only got an hour in class to work through those papers, you'll see there's a little bit of a gap there, and we don't want those papers to go to waste. So what we implemented this year was that the day after the lesson, we do an after-school session on that paper, which we call Past Paper Club, and we invite students to come to Past Paper Club and to work through the rest of that paper with their peers and with lots of teachers in the room. This has been wildly popular with our year 11s this year. We started running it right at the end of September, and we've never dipped below over 20 students there, and we've had up to 50 students there before. Our year 11s thought this was brilliant, and I thought it was a really, really good way to get that support, because that support has to be individualised to needs, and so therefore students can go, I've been finding this question hard, can I get some help with that? And there's a teacher on hand to help. The last thing I'm going to talk about at this stage is just about tiering. So again, unlike English, maths is tiered, and we have the higher tier and foundation tier. We think that at the end of year 10, we've got a good idea about which tiers most students in year 10 will be going ahead and sitting. But we know there are some grey areas in the middle where we know that we've got some students who've been struggling to cope with the higher tier or have been flourishing with foundation tier at the moment. Later on this term, what we're going to do is we're going to do something that we call a tiering test, which looks at those crossover questions which are easiest on higher and hardest on foundation, and seeing how well our students cope with that to help guide where we go on that. As a general principle, if we are confident that a student can get a grade 5 at foundation, we will try them out at higher, but we will go through that trial exam process, and if it looks like they're not going to be succeeding on higher, we will always err on, if it looks like the most likely grade they're going to get is a 5, we'll put them onto foundation because it's a much better experience for the students. I will, if that, as I've just said, doesn't concern all of the students across year 10, but roughly speaking, if students are in a set 2 or a set 3, that is something that will be pertinent and something that we might be talking about. So watch out for an email on that. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Mr. Pancholi, who's going to talk about science.
Hello everyone. Wow, there's a lot of people. Hello. I'm Mr. Pancholi. I am lead practitioner for science. Parents, guardians, wonderful year 10s. If you would, cast your minds back to 1st of September, around 8 a.m. or so. You or your child is leaving home, coming to Ashby School. Now cast your minds back to this morning. You or your child is leaving home, coming to Ashby School. I'm not sure about you guys, but for me, that time frame has just flown by. It's been a very, very, very short amount of time. And the reason I chose about today is this morning we had a physics exam, and I said bye-bye to my year 11s. They go on exam leave. And speaking to them, their feedback was, oh my gosh, sir, where has that time gone? Year 11 will fly by. We're at the end of year 10 at the moment. Year 11 will fly by. And I think with science, different to English, slightly different to maths, there is a lot of content, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of learning that students need to be able to do. So with that time frame in mind, if you just keep that year 11 time frame in mind, I want to talk you through what science involves. I'll come back to that slide in just a moment. So, similar to maths, science is tiered with a higher tier and a foundation tier. With the foundation tier, students can achieve grades 1 to 5. Obviously, we'll be aiming for the highest possible there. And the higher tier students, 4 to 9, again, supporting your children to get the highest possible they can do. Grades 1 to 5, the foundation tier, there's slightly less content. Now, we won't be making tiered decisions until around middle of year 11, early year 11, when we have more information about how your students are doing. Science has got 6 papers. Each paper, go back to that one, 6 exam papers. Each paper is 1 hour and 45 minutes. And you or your child will walk away with 3 GCSEs, 1 for biology, 1 for physics, 1 for chemistry. So the amount of learning that they will receive over this period of time is quite vast. So with that in mind, what can you do to support, and what, as year 10 students, what can you do to prepare for that? Unlike English, unlike a little bit like maths, we don't know how the exams are going to look. There is no set structure. We know that exams start with relatively foundation knowledge questions at the beginning of the exams, and then ramp up with more application, longer answer questions, more calculation questions. But we don't know what the structure is going to look like. So in terms of frameworks, I can't say to your children or to yourselves, this is how you would answer this kind of question. They look different every year. So in preparation, what can you do? Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots more past exam paper practice. That's my absolute request. And it must start to be prepared for year 11. It must start now. Your teachers, your physics teachers, your biology teachers, your chemistry teachers, we're all more than happy to receive those past papers that you do and to mark them and to give you feedback and to talk you through where your gaps are. But in order to be able to apply that knowledge, you need to have the foundational knowledge. And this is where the skills such as, which our RSL leads have spoken about, the core 4, using the foundational knowledge, I forgot what they're called, flashcards, those kind of things really, really help cement and secure through retrieval practice, through constantly revisiting knowledge, through constantly revisiting the foundational supports that you need to get there. So please do put into practice loads and loads and loads of past paper questions, loads and loads of making flashcards or doing retrieval tasks and getting hold of that basic information. And then in lessons, we'll be supporting you to make use of that information, make use of those flashcards, talking you through how to answer exam questions, talking you through where your gaps are. And that is our job to get you where you need to get to. In an exam, there are 3 levels of questions. AO1 questions are those foundational pieces of knowledge, things that are on the specification, and the specifications are available online. I sent some information out. I think all of you should have received something earlier in the year in terms of what the exams look like and links to specifications. AO1 questions are your basic foundation. They only make up a small proportion. They are questions such as what is, name, define, describe. AO2 questions then take that information and ask you to begin to apply to scientific ideas. Why did? What would happen if? Explain. AO3 is where we start getting those really high grades in, the grades your students deserve. AO3 is where we start analyzing. Here's an experiment. Tell the examiner what you see happening, why did it happen, how did it happen, what would happen if, what does the graph say? So you can see the information and knowledge ramping up as we go through the paper. This applies to all 6 exam papers. Once you get a feel of how to answer exam papers, you can then begin to get a feel of the key words and the key knowledge and the key piece of information that every exam question asks for. Parents, guardians, you can play a massive part in preparing your children for this. So these exam board guides, CGP guides or revision guides are very, very helpful. Year 10s, if you can go home after a science lesson and spend 10, 15, 20 minutes just going to your parents, guardians, and saying, today in science, we did X, Y, Z. Your parents or guardians flick open the revision guide, and they can just shoot some questions to you. The revision guides are made so that non-scientists, non-specialists, maybe such as yourselves, can open a page, and you can ask direct questions to your children and see what they're saying. If they're wrong, you can play a part in saying, actually, do you want to rephrase that? Tell me more about. Online, BBC Bitesize is a fantastic resource. BBC Bitesize summarizes what your student needs to know in a way that is very accessible. And my previous year 11s have found it very, very useful to sit with the parents, with the guardians, go through BBC Bitesize, spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes watching a couple of videos, again, asking that key information and having a little chat about it. And the way you might even learn something as well. And that gentleman right there is free science lessons. If you want something to the point with no faff in the most accessible way, free science lessons. And it's on one of the links I sent out in the revision resource. I'm happy to send that out again to help you get there. Please encourage your children to come to the after-school clubs, the homework clubs. And in terms of homeworks, we are going to be doing a lot more retrieval tasks and then revisiting them in lessons to ensure that your children are getting the core piece of information that they can do. And once they are secure, once we feel that they are secure, we can then begin to practice applying, analyzing, moving on to the AO2 and AO3 levels. Okay? We've talked about tiering. It'll be a decision made sort of March-ish time. And with that, I'll be passing it back to Ms. McCafferty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The information that has just been shared with you is in your booklets on the subjects on a page. You've got some QR codes there as well that take you to some of the revision sites and some of the resources that our colleagues have spoken about with you this evening. There's also a link within your booklet to... gone too far. There is a QR code in your booklet which takes you to our GCSE page on our website, which has got all of the subjects information on there, including a guide to the Core 4. It's also where you'll find those videos about the Core 4. So everything you need is in that one place. So please do use the resources there that we've given to you to refer back to. I just want to spend a couple of minutes just talking about the next steps, what you as parents and you as students need to be thinking about going into year 11 and going forward, because once you've done those GCSEs next year, what door is that going to open for you, and where are you going to go in 12 months' time? And it's really important you start to think about that now, because next term will be when the open evenings, the open days start for the colleges and for the sixth form or other places that you want to apply to, and that's the time that you need to be really starting to think about those applications, which will be covered and I'll come back to in a moment. Our sixth form, for example, is our open evening. It's the dates are in your booklet as well. Will be on the 4th of November. We will also do open campus visits on 2 Saturdays, which are the dates for which are in your booklet as well, where you can come and visit our campus, which of course is on the other site. One of the real big advantages of Ashby Sixth Form is not only the size of our sixth form, so we've got over 500 students. It also means that we've got a huge breadth of qualifications that we can offer to our students, so over 31 qualifications that we offer. There are also within that, there are a number of packages within business and within design and healthcare for students wanting to enter those subject areas that we can support students with, not just with their qualification, but in terms of work experience, trips and guest speakers. We've also got a huge range of enrichment and extracurricular opportunities for you, including student leadership,
But there's also that independence. There's also that fact that it is our own campus, that they're on another site across the road, not that far away. But students in year 10, you'll have only really seen that as being going over to your PE lessons. So part of that open evening that we have in November, the open evening will be for you to be able to come and speak to the subject teachers to find out about the different qualifications we offer. But those Saturday events for you to come and actually look at our campus actually allows you to be able to see what the campus will look like during the day, because as we know, by the time we get to November, it gets dark. You can't really see what those resources are like, our facilities are like. So please do try and come along to those if Ashby Sixth Form is one of those options for you. It might not be sixth form, it might be college and it might be apprenticeships, but whatever that next step might be, it's really important you do start to do your research. What are you going to need to do to get onto whatever course that may be, or to gain that that apprenticeship place? Start to do that research now so that you know what you've got to aim for, you know what grade you're going to need, and therefore what other little bits and pieces as well you might need alongside it. If you want to do an apprenticeship, they might want you to have a little bit of work experience. So it's really important to look at what that application will look like, what the qualifications will be needed to get there. There will be a range of resources and work done with students in the autumn term through what we call PS16, which is our online application system, which helps our students to apply for what those next steps may be, whether it be sixth form or it be a college. But it also, there will be some work within PD lessons, there'll be assemblies, we have access to the careers advisor. If students do want to see our careers advisor, they just need to ask. A number of students out there already have been to see our careers advisor and have got some of that information already. We will also provide you as parents with that information in the autumn term as well, so that you can help and guide your students through that process. The PS16 application process to colleges and onto sixth form is a long process. Although there is time going to be dedicated in personal development lessons and through the CREW programme, there will be some elements of that you will as parents want to have some input in anyway, but also we will ask you to help and support with, because the time that's taken to write a personal statement, for example, might need a little bit of support from you at home as well. So we will communicate that information with you as the term progresses when we return. The other little bits I just wanted to talk to you about really is over the next term, over the next year or so, what can your students do to help themselves? What can we do to make sure that students are maximising their potential? It goes without saying that students actually being in school and attending school are going to get the most out of it. So please encourage attendance where to school, to encourage punctuality. Students are great on the whole, but sometimes we do drag our heels a little bit, certainly at the ends of break and lunch when we're just finishing off a conversation with our friends. Really important that as students you really start to take on board now how important these next 12 months are. Every minute you're getting of learning in the classroom is really important. So please make sure that you are being punctual to school in the mornings, but to your lessons throughout the day as well, so that you aren't missing out on vital information and some of that recall that might happen at the beginning of each lesson from previous lessons or even from year 10 that you might need to remember. Attend some of those revision sessions. Once you get that programme of what's going on when, start to plan that out and start to actually come to some of those revision sessions and spread that out across all the different subjects. Don't just go for the ones where I know I really enjoy that subject, I know I really want to do that going forward. Make sure it's spread across all subjects, that you are making sure that you are gaining the maximum output, input from teachers, that you get the best output in the exams at the end of year 11. Make sure you actually start that revision programme. Too many students say it's too early. I'm only in year 10. What do I need to, why do I need to revise now? You've just heard from our core subjects there about how important the curriculum knowledge is, and that practice is as well, about putting it into practice and that practicing the skills. That is important to start even this side of the summer, to have some input in over the summer holidays, so that we come back in September. 6 weeks is a long time to have not been in school. It's deserved, you need a break, but equally when you come back in September, you don't want to have forgotten a lot of that information from year 10, because you're going to be getting given a lot more information for year 11. If there are any difficulties, if anyone needs any support, share how you're feeling, come and talk to your trusted adults, talk to your parents as well. Make sure that you are just talking and you are sharing how you're feeling, so you can be successful. We don't want you worrying about anything, and some of those worries sometimes are things that we can resolve really easily. So please do speak up, but ultimately, really important that you take that responsibility. It's your learning, it's your education, it's your GCSEs you'll get at the end of this. So therefore, be doing what you can to make sure that you are successful. And as parents, what can you do as well to help support that? helping your students to be positive. It is really difficult when we get towards the exams where they've got all of these subjects to revise for, they've got all of those exams coming up. We need to make sure that we're helping and supporting in that positive frame of mind and keeping them in that right frame of mind to help and support them with their studies. Please help them to plan that revision. You've got some examples in the booklet there. We've spoken to you about how to plan that revision. If you need any more support, please do approach us at school, speak to your teachers about how to plan that revision, how to break it down in each subject as to what to do at what time. But as parents, please encourage that and please help to prepare those revision timetables, provide that environment for the conducive environment for study. Perhaps have the phone from your child for an hour or so that they can concentrate, give it them back afterwards. Make sure that they do have regular breaks in that, though. It is really important, as Mr. Griggs pointed out earlier, really important that students do still have time for their relaxation, as well as the studies as well. Having that environment, keeping them fed, keeping them drinking throughout all of that, we know it goes without said. Any of those resources that you might need, we've given you some information this evening about the core subjects. We'll give you more information in Year 11 about the option subjects that your children study, about resources that you can get hold of. If you need any support with accessing any of that, please do speak to us at school. And again, just helping and supporting with the timetable, both from a revision point of view, an exam point of view when the exams get published, but also just in terms of preparing your child for each day ahead and making sure that they're coming to school prepared for the lessons they've got that day, having done what they needed to do to prepare for it. The final bit of information just to share with you is just some important dates for next year. Students when they are in Year 11, they will do two sets of trial exams. One set in October into November, as you can see, and that will be across all subjects. They will do another set in February time as well, again, across all subjects. That gives the students more opportunity to practice. It gives us as teachers more opportunity to see where our students are at, to then helps and guides our teaching and learn so that we can make sure that we are adapting our teaching to support the students. It helps make some of those tiering entry decisions as well that we've spoken about this evening. In between that, in December, which is detailed in your roadmap in the front of your booklet, there is also Parents' Evening as well, so we'll be able to discuss how the trial exams have gone, what the next stages will be. We've already mentioned as well there'll be another evening like this in Year 11 where we'll also have the option subjects faculty leaders here as well to talk you through how to support your children with that in next year, and that will be detailed in your booklets as well. The actual GCSEs, we have got an approximate start date of Thursday the 6th of May. It's getting earlier and earlier each year. This year, for the first time, it's come forward a week into that Thursday. I spoke to the exams team last week. They've still got the provisional timetable in place, not the exact timetable, so we can only estimate. But the fact that they brought it forward early 2 days this year, we've just got to be prepared. They are going to be starting the first week of May. That's the actual external exams. There will be internal exams in April, May time as well. Before that, for example, arts, textiles, languages exams, some of those will take place before the actual external timetables exams begin. So please bear that in mind as the year goes on in terms of what will be taking place. Also, again, we estimate it feels a long way away, doesn't it? So we haven't even got through this year's one, but what results day will be around, hopefully it'll be, it's the date that I've found on the websites, around the 19th of August next year. So again, just preparing that and knowing so that you're around to support your children through their GCSE results and what those next stages will look like. All that's really left for me to say is, again, a really big thank you for coming along. I hope you found it really informative. I know there has been a lot of information given to you this evening to take away and digest. So if you do have any questions that you've got now, we're around in the library to answer any of those questions. But equally, please do get in touch with us. If you go away and think of something you wanted an answer to, please get back in touch with us because we're more than happy to help and support you to make sure that you reach your potential. Mrs. Cooper is also here as your year team leader. So if anybody does want to speak to Mrs. Cooper, she is here in the library at the end in a moment, as well as the English, Maths and Science leads as well, and our RSLs. So thank you again for coming and best of luck over the next 12 months. Thank you.